Elton John is back at number 1 again in the UK for the first time in about 20 years, this time featuring Dua Lipa. But what's really interesting about his new song Cold Heart is it's not actually a new song. It's cut together from 4 existing Elton John records. I'm actually pretty sure that Elton John went nowhere near a recording studio to create this new hit single. This new song Cold Heart is a medley of 4 classic Elton John songs: Rocket Man, Where's the Shiraz, Sacrifice and Kiss the Bride. Last year Elton was trying to go on his new tour, but it was cut short of course by the pandemic. So instead he set about creating a new album, but with the restriction of not really being able to go anywhere physically. But despite these limitations, Elton still managed to top the charts with a new song. So let's look at how Elton, Dua Lipa and producers Pinal managed to take 4 existing songs and create a new hit. Cold Heart opens with this section sung by Elton.
It's a human sign when things go wrong.
However, as any seasoned Elton John fan would recognise, this is actually the verse section of Elton's 1989 track Sacrifice.
It's a human sign when things go wrong.
Cold Heart is using a direct sample of Sacrifice. Elton hasn't re-sung this is his original performance from 1989. However, here we are hearing it in a different harmonic context. The melody has been re-harmonised. Rather than Sacrifice's original chord progression, 1-4-2-5 in the key of D-flat major, here we have a new chord progression in the relative minor key of B-flat minor, which casts a different light onto the melody despite being the exact same notes and exact same vocal performance. In fact, oddly, the original version of Sacrifice is actually in a slightly out of tune D-flat major. It's about 50 cents flat, placing it between the keys of D-flat major and C major. This would have been due to the tape speed being adjusted after they recorded Sacrifice, which subtly changed the key center. However, the version of Sacrifice that we hear in Cold Heart has been corrected back to concert pitch, has been corrected back to normal D-flat major. So after this opening section, we then get Dua Lipa singing the chorus of Elton John's classic track, Rocket Man. Rocket Man has been transposed upper minor third to match the key of Sacrifice, and it's also been reharmonised. Rather than the original 1-4 chord progression that we get in Rocket Man, here Rocket Man's melody is set against the same B-flat minor chord progression that's looped throughout Cold Heart. Dua Lipa is also singing Rocket Man's melody 20 BPM slower than the original to match Cold Heart's tempo of 116 BPM. The Rocket Man section is then followed by Dua Lipa singing this line. This is another section that Elton John fans may recognise. It's actually a melody lifted from Elton John's 1983 single, Kiss the Bride. Kiss the Bride is originally in the key of C major, set against a 1-4-5 chord progression, and is played at the faster tempo of 139 BPM. So just like with Rocket Man, here in Cold Heart, we are hearing this excerpt of melody in quite a different context to the original. Now, 90% of Cold Heart is built from these 3 segments: Elton singing Sacrifice and Dua Lipa singing Rocket Man and Kiss the Bride. But near the end of the track, we do get one more sample from Elton's back catalogue. 3 minutes into Cold Heart, we get this gospel choir enter into the mix. This short choir section is actually a direct sample of the choir in Elton's 1976 track, Where's the Shiraz? As you can hear in Cold Heart, we're hearing this choir in quite a different context. Where's the Shiraz is originally in the key of E-flat major, so to fit it into Cold Heart's key of B-flat minor, they needed to move Where the Shiraz down by a tone, so it was in the relative major key of B-flat minor, D-flat major. And this is the super satisfying bit. Where's the Shiraz is originally at 130 BPM, whereas Cold Heart is at the slower tempo of 116 BPM. And if you vary speed, Where's the Shiraz, down from 130 BPM to 116, it also shifts the pitch, the key, from E flat major down to D flat major, perfectly matching it to Cold Heart's key and tempo in one move. Of course, using modern studio technology, we can change the tempo and key of a piece of music independently. We can make a song faster or slower without affecting its pitch, and vice versa. But even today, the best way to change the key and tempo without affecting the quality and tone of the original recording is to change them together, using the old school approach of vary speed, effectively changing the tape speed, or at least the virtual tape speed. Now, considering the reason Cold Heart is set at the tempo of 116 BPM is because of the sample they used of Sacrifice, this is actually a really amazing coincidence that Where the Shiraz can vary speed down to fit so neatly into the same key and tempo. I imagine producers Penau chose the samples for this track by going back through Elton's back catalogue and seeing which tracks could viably vary speed into the correct key and tempo to match with Sacrifice, which they had obviously chosen as the main track to build Cold Heart around. So they must have been pretty chuffed when they found that Where the Shiraz can actually vary speed perfectly into the right key and tempo. So that's how Elton John, with some help from Dua Lipa and Penau, managed to spin 4 classic tracks into a new hit single, making him the first artist to score a UK top 10 hit in 6 consecutive decades. This medley approach to songwriting reminds me of those Stars on 45s medleys you used to get, where they take various hits of an artist and cut them together into a medley and release it as a single. And I think those are seen as quite a cheap and easy money grab, taking old material and spinning it into a new product. But considering the limitations and restrictions that Elton was working in last year, I think medley was a pretty good solution for the fact that he wanted to create new music, but he couldn't leave his house.
You know, what they do with my old songs, I just give them the tapes and say, you can do whatever you like with them. And they've done this one. And it's basically 4 songs. It's Sacrifice, Rocket Man, Kiss the Bride, and a very obscure song from an album called Blue Moves, called Where's the Shiraz. So I don't know what I'm going to get. And when this landed on my lap, I listened to it and I went, this is fantastic. It would be even better maybe if there was someone else singing the Rocket Man part, because I've done that so many times. And Dua agreed to do it. So it's a bit of serendipity, really. But she makes the difference on it, because I think if it had just been me all the way through, it wouldn't have been so special.
Now, recently I asked you guys whether you'd be interested in seeing me play some GeoGuessr, and 71% of you said yes. So I've decided to start releasing GeoGuessr videos over on my second channel. So if you're interested, do head over to the second channel and be one of the very first people to subscribe. It's linked in the description. And as always, a massive thanks goes to everyone who supports me on Patreon, including the names you see on screen right now, and Andre Sainz Diaja, Andy Deacon, Andrew Sussman, Austin Barrett, Austin Russell, Bob McKinstry, Boo Medell, Whitney Parker, Cameron Orvilla, Colin Aiken, Chris Cabal, Christopher Ryan, David Bennett is hot, David Rivers, Donald Howard, Dr. Darren Wicks, Elena Skorchenko, Eugene Leroy, FD Hodor, Greg Kabowski, Ilamola Tona, Hamish Brocklebank, Hernick Kutcher, Hugo Miller, Ivan Pang, Jake Fisher, J.A. Kokensparger, John Dye, Josh Sanderlin, Justin Vigor, Mark Saitera, Mark Ziegenhagen, Max O'Keefe, Melody Composer Squared, Melanie Schonert, Michael Vivian, Nathan Lawrence, Nathaniel Park, Nick Chang, Paul Middleton, Paul Muller, Paul Pazel, Peter Dunphy, Richard Bride, Roger Clay, Sadia Carone, John Kennedy, Steve Daly, Stephen Lazaro, Tim Beaker, Trisha Adams, Tim Payne, Victor Levy, Vidad Flowers, Vladimir Kodakov, Volti, Waylon Fairbanks, and Zaybot.